Get you talking.
Welcome back. It is 5:06. It's drive time this Tuesday. And I'm asking today whether feminism, or some would say a particular brand of so-called toxic feminism, their words, not mine, starting to marginalise or demonise some men in society. Well, a major new survey shows that 42% of men feel that way. A quarter of women feel that way too. And a whopping 46% of Tory voters. So where do you stand on this issue? Personally, I find it slightly offensive that unless a man wears a I am a feminist t-shirt in the same way that Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband did a few years ago, that they're in some way against equal rights. But I just wonder why is it that, you know, the London media liberal elite despise labels unless it's a label like feminist that they demand we should all take on. I do want to hear from you on this, though. Do you think men in society are feeling marginalised or demonised because of feminism today? 0344 499 1000 is my number. 0344 499 1000. We'll start the debate in just a moment.
You're talking.
But as I mentioned, a third of young British people believe feminism is marginalising and demonising men. Now, this is according to a massive survey by YouGov. It also suggested that 33% of men aged between 18 to 24 also agreed with the statement, feminism is to blame for making some men feel marginalised and demoralised in society. So I guess the point there is that any suggestion that this is just about old codgers, old folk, old sexists feeling worried or nervous about feminism is actually not quite right. In fact, across all age groups, it's 42% of men that felt feminism was marginalising and demonising. And surprisingly, you might say 25% of women are also worried about the fact that feminism could be marginalising men. So what do you think? Are you worried about this so-called brand of toxic feminism? Are you worried about men being forced into wearing T-shirts that say, I'm a feminist? 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000 is my number. We also have a poll running on Talk Radio's Twitter page about this, which you can vote on at Talk Radio. Is feminism making men feel marginalised in society? Right now, 54% of people saying yes, 36% of people saying no, and 10% of people saying something else. Now, to debate this right now, I'm joined by Natalie Collins. She is a gender justice specialist and the author of Out of Control, and Mike Buchanan, who is the leader of the political party Justice for Men and Boys campaign. Natalie, were you surprised as a feminist by the results of this poll that shows that young men, a third of young men, worried about the impact of feminism on society today, and actually 25% of women also concerned? This must be worrying for you.
Well, I don't think it is surprising. And this research was commissioned by Hope Not Hate, which are an anti-fascist group. And they've raised concerns about what this research suggests about where we are kind of in the popular space. And they've talked about how often people kind of become slightly concerned about feminism and end up on YouTube and get quite sucked into this quite negative, very, very right-wing and actually quite fascist and they're raising concerns about what this means for us as a society. So I think even those who've commissioned this research did say from a place of being very concerned about what this means for our society, rather than just kind of all the liberal elites have a problem as such.
Well, look, I want you to debate with Mike Buchanan on this, because Mike actually thinks it's feminism that is the problem. A cancer on society, Mike, really?
It's very much so. And I've got to say, men don't just feel demonised and marginalised by feminism. They are marginalised in so many walks of life. Men are being disadvantaged, and most of the time that can be attributed directly to feminism. Feminism has never been about gender equality. It's always been about increasing gender privilege for women.
Natalie, your response?
Well, I'd really like to know what he means by feminism is oppressive men. What does he mean by that?
Mike, what do you mean? How is feminism oppressing men, Mike?
I think, well, I don't think I use the word oppress, but it certainly disadvantages them in huge numbers of areas. So, for example, let's just take domestic violence. I mean, there's virtually no provision of support for male victims of domestic violence. although it's known that in the minority of couples where the violence is one way, the perpetrator is twice as likely to be a woman as a man. And yet there's virtually no support for men, because
feminists. It's not true.
What's not true, Natalie?
It's just not true.
Natalie, what part specifically isn't true?
That every domestic violence service in the country now has to have provision for male victims of abuse, and that has had a huge detrimental impact on a lot of feminist services who are now having to support men. So don't say that there's not those services. There are services available for men, and it is nonsense to suggest that men are the majority victims of domestic violence.
I was talking about the minority of couples where violence is one way. It is the perpetrator is twice as likely to be a woman.
I don't know what you mean by that, and I don't know where this data is coming from.
Well, if you don't know what I mean by it, then you're just justifying why we presented you with a Gormless Feminist of the Month award a few years back.
Well, I did wear that badge with pride.
Why did you present Natalie with that award, Mike? What had she done wrong?
I can't remember. She comes out with so many Gormless things, but I think it was something to do with she lied on the big questions, and I picked her up on.
This suggests something about the level of dialogue that we have, that I'm supposed to be the problem here that is disadvantaging men when Mike is over there awarding certificates for feminists being gormless, which feels slightly, problematic, I would say.
No, the problem was your lies. That's the problem, Natalie. As a feminist, all feminists are liars.
It sounds he's very anti, isn't he? Don't you think that?
Well, Mike, I am surprised that you would say all feminists are liars. That is a very strong statement to make.
Yeah, of course it's strong, but I can justify it because all forms of feminism believe in something called the patriarchy. And the patriarchy no more exists than fairies at the bottom of the garden.
I think it really depends on what you're
if you look at, we have in our manifesto 20 areas where the human rights of men and boys are assaulted by the state, almost always to privilege women and girls. And I challenge Natalie now to tell me one area, just one, where the human rights of women and girls specifically in the UK today are assaulted. One.
Natalie, is there any area?
Well, 80,000 women a year are raped by men.
They're not. That's the line you came up with on the big questions. But carry on.
Let me step in here because I actually want to get back to the point that we are talking about today, which is about this idea of feminism. Because what interests me, Natalie, is this idea that if you believe in equal rights, and I'm often told this, it's often said to me, Dan, if you believe in equal rights for women, you are a feminist. And so as a result, men feel under a lot of pressure to define as feminists. Whereas I like to say, Natalie, that I believe in equal rights across all areas, but I'm not a gay rights advocate, despite the fact I'm gay. And I also don't want to label myself a feminist. But of course, I believe in equal rights for women. Do you think that actually men are feeling, men, and actually not just men, women as well, because Mike says that only 9% of women actually define themselves as feminists. So why are people like you constantly pushing us to define as feminist?
I'm not pushing anyone to define as a feminist. I'd much prefer that people who aren't feminists stop calling themselves feminists. So I think it's really problematic when you have politicians who put forward austerity measures which have particularly disadvantaged women much more than the men, that they didn't wear T-shirts and saying feminist. It's something that's become a term that is being pushed on people, that you should say you're a feminist. And I would much rather that unless people held a feminist value system, and actually I would say that feminism is more than just about equal rights. It's a belief, and this is where Mike would very much disagree with me and would call me a liar, is the idea that there is a systematic issues in the way that women are treated, both by men as individuals, but also how men and women experience the world. So the fact that the biggest killer of men under under 50 is suicide, a feminist analysis of that would be that this is because of the pressure on men to perform masculinity in certain ways. And so it's not just about saying we want equal rights for men and women. It's about saying that we live in a society where there is disadvantage and we need to look at liberation for women. But Mike would very much disagree with me on that.
Mike?
I would, because feminist analysis, by its definition, is always absurd. The reason that the number one killer of men under 45 in Britain is suicide is reactive depression brought on by things like being denied access to children following divorce, and we know there's a big spike in the suicide rate after divorce, mainly for that reason. And I recommend to your listeners, Dan, that they buy a book which only came out a few days ago called The Empathy Gap by William Collins, and it's to do with the empathy that society has. This is both men and women. Society has for women compared with men. And it's a huge gap, and it's something that feminists ruthlessly exploit.
But Mike, how on earth can you say that men are in a worse position than women in society? I mean, surely you just have to look at things like the gender pay gap.
Mike doesn't believe in the gender pay gap.
Sorry, Natalie.
You don't believe in it, do you, Mike?
No, it exists, but it's got damn all to do with paying men more than women for the same job, and that's been explored. God, it must be thousands of times. In fact, there's a small gender pay gap in favour of women under 40, and I'm guessing wildly that Natalie's not campaigning to end that. I can list you many areas where men are disadvantaged. Starts very early. Natalie, please. It starts very early in life with genital mutilation, where the state for 40 or 50 years has been investing huge sums of money to end female genital mutilation, at the same time as it takes income taxes from the butchers who carry out the crime, because male and female genital mutilation are crimes under the Offence Against the Person Act.
So Natalie, given so many people are clearly worried about feminism, I mean, as I said, if you look at the results in this poll, even young men worried about this idea of toxic feminism, worried about men feeling marginalised and demonised in society. I just want to know, Natalie, from your point of view as a feminist, does it concern you? Are you trying to bring those people on board in some way?
I think we have to look at what this research was saying, and what it was saying is that actually the anti-feminist route is this gateway to all sorts of other issues, and the reality is that, and my argument would be that if a certain group of people have had privilege, which I would argue men have, that once men are losing some of that and are being challenged on that, they are going to feel threatened, just like if you're white and you get challenged on being racist, then you might feel threatened by that too. And the reality is that is just a part of trying to shift the balance of power. And so I would say it's an inevitable consequence that people may feel uncomfortable, people may feel threatened, but I wouldn't say the fact that people feel that is necessarily representative of the reality.
Final question, Natalie, are you a feminist?
I am, of course, a feminist.
Mike, are you a feminist?
I'm an anti-feminist and very proud of it.
So that sums it up. Thank you very much, Mike Buchanan, leader of the political party Justice for Men and Boys campaign, Natalie Collins, gender justice specialist and the author of Out of Control. What side of the fence do you come down on? Are you with Mike, who says feminism is making men feel very much marginalised in society and demonised, or like Natalie, who says, in fact, there has to be liberation for women? She wants to go one step further. Feminism is much more than just equal rights. 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000 is my phone number. You can text me as well. Or we've got this poll running at Talk Radio too, so we'll bring you the results of that in just a moment.
You're talking.
Is feminism making men feel marginalised in society? 58% of you saying yes in our poll right now. 33% saying no. Jay Bailey messages to say men shouldn't let feminism affect their spirits. If so, then feminism wins. Jay says, I think the core value meaning of feminism has been forgotten in today's times. It's now been used to have a platform to moan from instead of focusing on equality and also equity. And Alex says the key word here is toxic feminism. There are different schools of thought and neither of your callers seem to understand or represent my idea of feminism. If you are feeling marginalised as a man, my feminist ideals are there to fight for your rights and help too. I like that. That's a positive way of looking at it. Sean. Oh, by the way, if you want to call me on this 03444991000, you can tweet me at Talk Radio or message 87222. Sean is in London. Sean, what's your view on this debate about feminism?
I mean, I quite like that idea of non-toxic feminism. Of course, it's equality for men and women, but I think that there is a problem with the type of feminism which continues to portray the world as a place where women are being disadvantaged at the hands of men. And I think lots of the time that is just not the case. And the way they make the argument is to focus on negative things that happen to women and focus on the bad things that men do and ignoring the bad things that women do and the negative things that men suffer. It's just half the story, really, but it's used to perpetuate this sense that women are being oppressed all the time.
Have you felt under pressure personally, Sean, to define yourself as a feminist?
No, I actually work with men who suffer mental health problems and in the criminal justice system. And I think a lot of the time men's suffering is simply ignored, not taken seriously. Another example, I would say, is that they say the criminal justice system, when women are before the criminal justice system, the courts are very sympathetic to all of the conditions and the circumstances which led a woman to offend, and I think that's a good thing. You know, women, the courts understand that women have problems. With men, no chance. With men, men are the problem. You know, and it's a very, very different approach. I think Mike Buchanan talking about the empathy gap. I think that is a really important concept. People are very willing to try and understand women and how women feel, and that's a good thing. But men's feelings, who cares? You know?
Thank you so much for your call. That is Sean in London, 03444991000.